Ethan Cole was a simple man with simple needs. He was not a soldier, not a hero, not even someone who dreamed of glory. He lived on a quiet colony far from Earth, where the most exciting thing that happened in his life was when the power flickered during storms. His days were filled with endless reports, research logs, and boring numbers that no one else wanted to touch. He wasn't bitter about it. Life was quiet, and quiet was safe. But there was one thing he wanted: an assistant. Not a friend, not a lover, not a partner, just someone or something to help him stay organized. He often sat in his small room at night, looking at the stack of unfinished work on his desk, feeling that familiar tightness in his chest. He told himself it wasn't loneliness. It was just stress, just fatigue. Still, when the Galactic Trade Hub advertised a new bioassistant program, he thought, why not? He imagined it would be some advanced AI program, maybe a sleek holographic interface that could keep track of his schedule, handle data sorting, and remind him when to eat before he collapsed over his keyboard. He didn't ask for much. He didn't want a miracle, just help. So he signed the application form. He didn't read all the details no one ever does. He just saw the words assistant and free trial and thought that was good enough. Weeks passed, and he almost forgot about it. Then one evening, as he was returning from the colony office, a transport ship landed near his small home. It wasn't unusual for ships to land, but this one was sleek and marked with the Trade Hub's insignia. He felt his heart jump. Finally, they sent it. He imagined opening a box with some fancy piece of tech inside. He imagined plugging it in, and finally, getting some order in his life. But what stepped out of the ship was not a box. It was a girl. She was tall, taller than Ethan by a head. Her skin shimmered faintly like polished silver, catching the soft light of the sunset. Her hair was long and smooth, pale as moonlight. But it was her eyes that froze him in place, samber, glowing faintly, as though two small suns lived inside them. She looked at him not with the blank stare of a machine, but with an intensity that made him take an involuntary step back. She walked toward him slowly, each step graceful, her robes flowing around her like liquid light. Ethan's mind scrambled for explanations. Was this some kind of mistake? Was she lost? The girl stopped in front of him and spoke his name. Ethan Cole. Her voice was soft, trembling at the edges, but carried strength beneath it. Yes. Ethan answered cautiously. The moment the word left his lips, she did something that made his heart pound louder. She knelt on one knee before him, bowed her head, and placed a hand over her chest. Her whole body shook, as if the act itself carried enormous meaning. I am Liara, she said. Her voice was firm now, like a vow. By the bond of my people, by the stars above us, I claim you as my mate. Ethan's mouth went dry. He blinked once, then twice, then shook his head as though clearing water from his ears. Wait, what? No. I think you have the wrong idea. I applied for an assistant. A program like a computer. Not this. But Liara only lifted her head, her golden eyes burning with certainty. You asked? I was sent. I belong to you now. Took a step back, his heart racing. This is insane. He wanted a digital helper, not a living, breathing alien girl kneeling in front of him, declaring herself his mate. Look, he said, his voice breaking between frustration and panic. I don't know what mistake happened here, but I only wanted someone to organize my schedule. Liara tilted her head, her expression unreadable, and yet in her gaze there was something more, something heavy, like a silent plea. Ethan stood frozen, unable to process the moment. A quiet man who wanted nothing more than order in his dull life was suddenly staring at the living embodiment of chaos, and deep inside, though he tried to deny it, a voice whispered that his life was about to change forever. Ethan could not stop staring at the strange being who now stood in his yard. The evening wind tugged gently at her silver hair, making it ripple like water in the light. She looked calm, but her glowing eyes studied him with such focus that he felt exposed, as if she could see through all the walls he had built inside himself. Finally, he He found his voice. Who are you really? She pressed a hand over her chest. I am Liara of the Varen line. I was chosen, prepared, and sent to you. From now on, I live as your bondmate. Ethan nearly choked. Mate. No, that's not what I signed up for. I asked for an assistant, you know? Someone to help with data, with paperwork, with keeping things organized. That's all. Liara tilted her head slightly, confusion flickering across her features. And that is what I am. My people do not build machines to serve. We give ourselves. We live in loyalty. We stand as shield, as voice, as heart. This is what you asked. Her words struck him like stones. Ethan blinked at her, trying to process them. He wanted to shout that she was wrong, that the program had made some terrible mistake. But when he looked into her eyes, he saw no mockery, no trickery, only sincerity. She truly believed she was what he needed. He rubbed his temples, sighing. You don't understand. I didn't mean a person. I meant, I don't know, an AI? A digital thing. Something that doesn't eat, doesn't sleep, doesn't... He waved his hands helplessly at her. Doesn't come with this whole mate thing. Liara's gaze softened. You wished for help? Help cannot come without heart. Without bond, there is no true service. To stand beside someone is to choose them, and I have chosen you. Her words were simple, yet they carried a weight that silenced him. For the first time in years, Ethan felt small not because she was taller, not because she spoke with strange certainty, but because she looked at him as if he was the most important person in existence. No one had looked at him like that in a long time. Maybe never. Still, his rational mind fought back. Listen, Liara, I live alone. My life is well. It's boring. I don't need anyone to fight for me or whatever it is you think you're here for. I just needed help with work. She stepped closer, her expression unreadable. And I will help. With work, with life, with everything. That is what it means to be bound. Ethan's heart stumbled in his chest. Her presence was overwhelming. She wasn't threatening, yet she wasn't passive either. She radiated devotion in a way that felt alien to him, to direct, to raw. Finally, he muttered, This is insane. Liara's lips curved faintly, almost a smile, but not quite. Perhaps, but it is also fate. The words hung between them. Ethan wanted to argue again, but he found himself strangely tired. Maybe it was the long day at work. Maybe it was the surreal shock of finding a living being instead of a machine. Or maybe it was the way her voice carried warmth, even as it unsettled him. He turned away, running a hand through his messy hair. Fine, you can stay for now. Until I sort this out? But don't get the wrong idea. I didn't ask for a mate. Liara bowed her head slightly, though her eyes gleamed with quiet fire. Understood. But know this, Ethan Coli do not leave easily. When my people bind, we bind for life. Those words sent another shiver down his spine. He wanted to say something clever, something sharp to remind her he wasn't interested, but no words came. Instead, silence stretched between them, filled only by the distant hum of the transport ship as it departed, leaving Ethan alone with the alien girl who had just claimed his life as hers. That night, as he lay in bed, Ethan stared at the ceiling, restless. From the other room, he could hear the soft rhythm of her breathing, steady and calm like she had no doubts at all. He clenched his fists under the blanket, telling himself this was temporary. Just a mistake. And yet, deep in the quiet of his heart, a whisper echoed. When was the last time someone chose you? Ethan shut his eyes tight, refusing to answer. Days turned into weeks. And Ethan soon learned that life with Liara was anything but ordinary. She wasn't just present, she was everywhere. From the moment he woke up, she was there. If he left for work, she walked beside him. If he ate, she sat across the table, silently watching, or sometimes humming strange tunes in her language. At night, she would sleep on a mat near the door, insisting it was her duty to guard his dreams. At first, Ethan found it almost amusing. Having someone cook meals, clean up without being asked, and even remind him when to take breaks felt like having the perfect assistant. Even if she took the role far too seriously, she cooked dishes from her world food that shimmered faintly and carried strange, sweet, spicy flavors he had never tasted before. She repaired his broken tools using methods he couldn't begin to understand. When he forgot his datapad, she had already placed it in his bag, but soon the weight of her constant presence began to grow heavy. She followed him to the colony office, standing quietly in the corner while he worked. His colleagues raised eyebrows and whispered behind his back. Some laughed, calling her his bodyguard bride. Others looked at him with envy, muttering about how Ethan, the quiet man no one noticed, somehow ended up with a devoted alien at his side. Ethan hated the attention. He had chosen this colony because it was far away, quiet, a place where he could be invisible. But with Liara by his side, invisibility was impossible. Everywhere he went, her silver hair and glowing eyes drew stares. One evening, after another long day of work filled with hushed laughter from his coworkers, Ethan finally lost control. "Why do you follow me everywhere?" he snapped, throwing his bag down on the table. "Do you have to stand next to me every second? Can't you just give me some space?" Liara, who had been preparing a bowl of glowing broth, froze. Her hands trembled slightly, though her face remained calm. "I am your bondmate. It is my duty to stay near you, to guard you, to share in your steps." Ethan ran a hand through his hair, pacing the small room. His voice rose, sharper now. "I didn't ask for that. I didn't ask for any of this. I needed help with numbers, with deadlines, with paperwork." Not he gestured wildly at her. "Not this. Not a guard. Not a mate." Silence fell like a stone between them. Lyra's amber eyes shimmered, but not with anger. With pain, she placed the bowl down slowly, carefully, as if any sudden movement might break the moment completely. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft, almost fragile. "If my presence is a burden to you, then say the word. I will go. I will leave you to your quiet life." Ethan froze, his anger deflating in an instant. The idea of her leaving should have brought him relief. That was what he had wanted, wasn't it? To return to his old routine, silent and simple, with no one watching him. No one reminding him of what he lacked. But the thought of her walking out the door left a hollow ache in his chest he hadn't expected. He opened his mouth, but no words came. His fists clenched at his sides as guilt and confusion twisted inside him. He hadn't meant to hurt her. He hadn't meant to see that flicker of sorrow in her glowing eyes. Liara bowed her head slightly. "You do not need to decide now. I will remain until you speak the truth of your will." She turned and walked quietly to the corner, sitting cross-legged on the floor, her back straight, her gaze lowered. The silver glow of her skin seemed dimmer somehow, as though his words had stolen the light from her. Ethan sat heavily on the edge of his bed, burying his face in his hands. He told himself he should just tell her to leave, that it would be better for both of them. But he couldn't. The words refused to form, because deep down, beneath his frustration and fear, he knew the truth. He didn't want her gone. He was just afraid. Afraid of needing someone again. Afraid of letting someone close. Afraid of what it meant to be seen, truly seen, by eyes that refused to look away. That night, as he lay awake, he listened to the quiet sound of her breathing in the corner. And though he didn't admit it out loud, sound comforted him more than he wanted to believe. The colony where Ethan lived was small and quiet, forgotten by the larger galaxy. That was one of the reasons he had chosen it. People there lived in peace, far away from wars and politics. The greatest danger most colonists faced was bad weather or a broken water pump. Life was simple, safe, predictable. But safety never lasts forever. It began one night with a sound that didn't belong, the distant rumble of engines, too heavy to be trading ships. The alarms followed soon after, sharp and shrill, cutting through the peaceful night like a blade. Ethan jumped from his bed, heart racing, confusion gripping him. "What's happening?" he muttered, fumbling for his boots. Liara was already at the door. Her body glowed faintly in the dark, her amber eyes sharp and alert. "Raiders," she said simply. The word froze his blood. Raiders, bands of scavengers who struck weak colonies, taking supplies, resources, and sometimes people. The colony guards were few, barely trained, and hardly armed. Against raiders, they stood little chance. Ethan's first instinct was to hide, to lock the door, crawl under the bed, and wait for it to be over. His body shook with fear, his throat tight. He had never faced violence in his life. He wasn't a fighter. He wasn't brave. But Liara, she was different. "Stay behind me," she commanded. Her voice calm but firm. Before he could answer, the first blast shook the ground, throwing dust from the ceiling. The sound of shouting and weapons echoed through the colony streets. Ethan staggered, nearly falling, but Liara caught his arm, steadying him with a strength that surprised him. They ran outside, and chaos met them. Fires lit up the night sky as raiders in patched armor stormed the settlement. Colonists screamed, scattering, some being dragged away, while others fought desperately with tools instead of weapons. Ethan froze at the sight. His legs refused to move. All he could do was stare at the horror unfolding. But Liara did not hesitate. She stepped in front of him, her silver skin glowing brighter, her body surrounded by a faint, shimmering light. Energy crackled in the air around her as if the very stars answered her call. Her stance was firm, unshakable. When the first raider spotted them and charged, raising a jagged blade, Ethan cried out in terror. But Liara moved like lightning. She raised her hand, and a wave of energy burst forth, slamming into the raider and throwing him back like a rag doll. Ethan's eyes widened. What are you?" "Your mate," she answered simply, before rushing forward. What followed felt like something out of legend. Liara fought with a grace and fury Ethan had never seen before. She was a storm in motion, striking with light, moving with impossible speed. Raiders who tried to attack them were thrown aside, disarmed, or sent fleeing in terror. Her voice rang out in strange words Ethan didn't understand, her body blazing brighter with every strike. And Ethan, he could only crouch behind her, trembling, useless. His heart hammered in his chest as shame burned inside him. She fought for him. She bled for him, and he could do nothing but hide. The battle raged on. The colony guards did their best, but it was Liara who stood like a wall, shielding Ethan from every threat. At one point, a raider broke through, lunging straight at him with a knife. Ethan's body locked in fear, unable to move. But Liara was faster. She stepped between them, taking the blade across her arm. With a cry, she struck back, sending the attacker sprawling unconscious. Blood shimmered on her silver skin, but she did not falter. She stood tall, her eyes blazing. By the time the raiders finally retreated, the colony lay in ruins. Fires burned, cries of grief filled the air, and the wounded were scattered across the ground. Ethan stood in the middle of it all, shaking, staring at Liara. She was wounded. Her silver skin streaked with blood, her body trembling from exhaustion. Yet when she turned to him, her face carried no regret, no fear, only relief. "You live," she whispered. Her voice was weak, but her eyes shone with fierce devotion. That is enough. Ethan wanted to speak, to thank her, to tell her how sorry he was for every harsh word he had said before. But the words caught in his throat. All he could do was stand there, staring at the alien girl who had just saved his life, who had faced death without hesitation while he cowered in fear. That night, as the fires dimmed and the survivors gathered, Ethan sat beside Liara while she tended her wounds. For the first time, he truly saw her not as a mistake, not as a burden, but as something far more, and deep inside, a thought began to grow. Quiet but strong. Maybe she was never here by accident at all. The raid ended, but the colony was left broken. Buildings smoldered with black smoke, windows shattered, and the ground was littered with scraps of metal and ash. The air was heavy with grief. Families cried for loved ones who never returned, while others carried the wounded on makeshift stretchers. Ethan stood in the ruins of his office, staring at broken datapads scattered across the floor. The reports he once worried about were nothing but ash now. He sank to his knees, his hands trembling. He had always feared failure, but now he realized how meaningless those fears were in the face of true danger. He had been useless when it mattered most. While others fought, while Liara bled, it had done nothing. The memory replayed in his mind again and again, the raider charging at him, the blade flashing, his body frozen in terror, till Liara threw herself between them. Her blood had spilled because of him. The shame burned inside him like fire. Liara entered quietly, her steps light, despite the fresh bandages wrapped around her arms. She saw him kneeling among the wreckage and came closer. Lowering herself beside him, "You live," she said softly, her voice steady even though her face looked pale. "That is what matters." Ethan shook his head, his voice breaking. "No, that's not enough. You fought, you bled, while I hid. I didn't do anything, Liara. I'm nothing." Her glowing amber eyes turned to him, and for a long moment she studied his face. Then she touched his hand gently, her silver skin warm against his. "You are human," she said. "You endure. That is not nothing, it is everything." Her words confused him. He pulled his hand away, rising to his feet in frustration. "You don't understand. I'm weak. I can't fight like you. I can't protect anyone. I can't even protect myself. Why would you? Why would you choose me?" Liara stood slowly, her posture straight despite her wounds. Her voice grew firmer, carrying strength. "Do you think I would claim you if you were weak? My people sense what lies inside. You have what matters most. Resilience. Heart. You do not see it, but I do." Ethan's chest ached. He wanted to believe her, but all he saw was his own failure. "I don't feel strong." She stepped closer, lifting his chin gently, so he was forced to meet her gaze. "Strength is not always in battle. Strength is rising again when the world falls around you. It is choosing to go on when your heart says to stop. That is why I chose you. That is why I'm bound to you." Her voice was steady, but her eyes glimmered with emotion. Ethan felt his throat tighten. He turned away quickly, afraid that if he spoke, the weight of her words would break something deep inside him. For a long time, silence filled the room. Outside, the colony worked to rebuild, their voices faint. Inside, Ethan stood with Liara, a storm of guilt and gratitude twisting inside him. Finally, he whispered, "I don't deserve you." Liara smiled faintly, though it carried sadness. "Perhaps, but I am yours anyway." The simple truth of her words hit him harder than any blade could. She didn't follow him out of duty alone. She had chosen him, truly chosen him. She had risked everything without hesitation, not for glory, not for honor, but for him. Ethan lowered his head, tears stinging his eyes. He didn't cry, often years of isolation had hardened him. But now, with this strange, silver-skinned girl standing before him, he felt the walls he had built around his heart begin to crack. That night, sat beside her as she rested, watching her breathe. Her wounds still worried him, yet she looked so calm. As if she trusted the world would not fall apart as long as he was near. He whispered softly, almost too quiet for even himself to hear, "I don't know if I can be what you see in me, but I'll try." Liara stirred, opening her eyes. And for the first time since the raid, she smiled fully bright, warm, and filled with something deeper than words. And in that fragile, flickering moment, Ethan realized something he could not deny anymore. She wasn't just an assistant. She wasn't just a mistake. She was becoming something far more days turned into a week after the raid. The colony slowly began to heal. Burned walls were rebuilt, streets were cleared, and families buried their dead with quiet tears. Life had not returned to normal, but the people endured. Because they had no other choice. Ethan helped where he could, lifting debris, carrying supplies, and repairing broken terminals. It wasn't much compared to what Liara had done, but it was something. And for the first time, when he worked among his neighbors, he felt a little less invisible. People no longer whispered about the strange alien girl at his side. They nodded to her with respect, even gratitude. But Ethan still carried the weight of doubt. Every night he remembered how he had frozen during the raid, how he had done nothing while Liara bled for him. no matter how many times she told him it was enough. The guilt stayed like a shadow. One morning, while he was cleaning the shattered glass from his office, a message blinked across his console. It was from the Galactic Trade Hub subject. Program correction notice. Ethan opened it quickly, his hands tightening around the edge of the screen as he read. The message explained there had been an error in his application. The bioassistant program had been a mistranslation. What he had received Lara was never intended for him. The hub apologized for the mistake. If he wished, they would recall her immediately and provide the assistant he originally requested, a proper AI program. Sleek, efficient, and without complication. All he had to do was confirm. Ethan sat back in his chair. Staring at the screen, his heart pounded heavily in his chest. This was it, the solution. The life he wanted from the beginning? A quiet life, with no confusion, no glowing-eyed alien watching him with unwavering devotion. No strange bond he didn't understand. Ethan. Lyra's voice came from behind him. He turned, and there she was. Standing in the doorway with the morning light touching her silver hair. She held a bowl of food she had prepared, but her eyes were on him. She must have seen the way he stared at the console, the way his hands shook. "What is it?" she asked softly. Ethan swallowed hard. "The trade hub. They made a mistake. You weren't supposed to come here. If I want, they'll take you back and send me what I asked for. An actual assistant." Lyra set the bowl down carefully on the table, her face calm, though her shoulders stiffened. "I see." For a moment, silence stretched between them. She did not beg. She did not argue. She only bowed her head slightly. "If it is your will, I will go."
Aye.
Her voice was steady, but Ethan saw the flicker in her eyes. Pain hidden behind pride. A quiet ache that she refused to let show,